Today, Maestro is not alone. I've been looking back to the many biopics about musicians to find common themes, and on this journey I came across that one film that arguably is the best among them, even though it's not really a biopic. The Maestro is Leonard Bernstein. I grew up with music by Bernstein. I was singing West Side Story in the choir, and I envied school friends who had the soundtrack album of the film. I still do. It was in the 70s. I was completely blown away when I saw On the Town with Frank Sinatra, Gene Kelly, Ann Miller and Vera Ellen. I didn't know at the time that many of the stage show songs didn't make it into the film. And now a film about the Maestro himself. Bradley Cooper is amazing. Even better the work of his makeup artist. Gary Mulligan, I guess she will get an Oscar. I love this film. I really do. Essentially, this film comes up with the claim that an artist needs to focus on his talent and abstain from all the distractions. This at least is what in the film his wife Alicia claims in the light of his affairs with some boys. Well, given his impressive oeuvre, given that he was a successful conductor and a teacher, did he really waste so much time? The challenge of biopics is to find a theme that fits the story, because life is rarely straightforward. It always has a beginning and an end, but what happens in between can be often very confusing. So let's look at other biopics about musicians and how they dealt with the theme of their life. An early biopic was the Benny Goodman story. In fact, Benny Goodman wasn't only alive, his career was still well underway. So the film showed how Benny Goodman made his way from a poor boy to the first jazz musician performing in the Carnegie Hall.
Well, this is something called Sing, Sing, Sing.
This film was a rags to riches story, no fighting with inner demons. Prior to the Benny Goodman story, another big swing orchestra leader was featured in a very successful biopic, Glenn Miller. Many jazz fans don't like his whitewashed swing sound.
He looks like he's got it, maybe. Listen to those kids.
But there's no maybe about it, Mr. Shipman. That's it. That's the sound.
He managed to create a very recognizable sound, which is an achievement. Glenn Miller appeared in films himself, like in Sun Valley Serenade. With the US joining World War II, he became a leader of a military band. The film with James Stewart portraying Glenn Miller told the love story with his wife and the tragic ending when his plane got missing over the channel in December '44, just 6 months before the end of the war. The first movies about musicians were about classical musicians. Schubert's Frühlingstraum was made in Germany a silent movie and came out in 1931. Leise Flehen meine Lieder, 2 years later, was the debut of the great Austrian director Willy Forst. It was a proper biopic about Schubert. Many more films about Schubert should follow. The tragic love story between Robert Schumann and Clara Schumann was depicted in Song of Love. This film dealt already with the mental strains the desire for recognition can produce. However, the majority of films about musicians was about how they achieved success, romantic love stories or tragic illnesses. Examples are the Italian Il Cavaliere del Sogno about Donizetti made in 1947, or Mario Lanza playing Caruso in The Great Caruso. This was to change in the 70s. Musicians in biopics started to suffer from within. One of the reasons might have been that many rock stars died of drug overdoses at the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s. Diana Ross played Billie Holiday in Lady Sings the Blues. Clint Eastwood dedicated a movie to the similarly troubled Charlie Parker in '88. A rather uplifting biopic was Zoe that showed the ups and downs, including drug addiction in the life of Ray Charles. He was a great survivor. Rock musicians became subjects of biopics as well, displaying all their fights with drugs and illnesses. Elvis is in a way leading the charts with 3 major biopics. One from the fictitious angle of his manager, and then even a brand new biopic from the angle of his wife. I'm waiting now for a film made from the angle of this bestseller. Not even Schubert would have received such a treatment. And now the biopics of all biopics, even though it's not really a biopic. This film is based on a theater play by Peter Shaffer. It was a fictional story about one of the most talented musicians who have ever lived, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Its theme are not his inner demons, more the inexplicable, exuberant genius and the envy it causes on the side of mediocrity. The pity was that another musician was treated unfairly, Salieri, because in reality he wasn't this evil, he was a good composer in his own right. Well, the author Peter Shaffer might have remembered Mark Twain's advice: never let the truth get in the way of a good story. I hope you liked this episode and you have been made curious to watch one or two of those wonderful films I mentioned.